Welcome to this deep dive historical analysis. As an objective historian, I can tell you there is absolutely nothing quite as fascinating as tracing the sweeping arcs of civilizations, just looking at how they build their immense power and exactly how they manage to lose it all. Today, we're embarking on a breathtaking 5,000-year journey through the history of ancient Egypt. We're going to analyze the rise of an empire built on absolute, unquestioned power and dig into the profound, history-altering moments that brought the whole thing crashing down.
Okay, let's dive into this, because right off the bat, we are faced with one of the most incredible historical paradoxes of all time. How on earth does a superpower that reigned supreme for 3 millennia, ruled by men who literally convinced the world they were immortal gods, find itself completely dismantled by an orphan slave who didn't even command an army? I mean, it's wild, right? To answer that, we really have to look at the anatomy of power itself.
But actually, to understand how this massive empire ended, our source starts much later in history with a really fascinating directive from the Prophet Muhammad. He actually predicted the eventual Muslim conquest of Egypt, and specifically urged his followers to treat its people with kindness. Years after his passing, after a pretty devastating plague had halted their earlier campaigns and claimed some of their top generals, Caliph Umar and his new army chief, Amr bin al-As, shifted their gaze. They looked away from Rome and focused on the impossibly wealthy 5,000-year-old region of Egypt.
Now let's wind the clock way back, 5,000 years, to the very beginning, to see exactly why Egypt was the ultimate prize. Back in the ancient world, global politics really came down to one single, absolute resource: water. The mighty Nile River made Egypt the undisputed center of the world. A ruler named King Narmer capitalized on this, unifying the region and establishing the world's very first great monarchy. For the next 1,000 years, control over the Nile's water literally meant absolute global dominance.
So how exactly do you maintain a 1,000-year grip on power? Well, you elevate yourself above humanity. The God-King concept was a brilliant, albeit totally ruthless, political tool. The pharaohs didn't just rule, they declared themselves actual living gods. They instituted a religion where the general public could only ever reach paradise if they remained completely subservient to their pharaoh. It was the ultimate failsafe for total control. Because, think about it, you can't exactly rebel against a god.
However, this ideology had a major catch. The theology evolved so that a pharaoh remained a god only if his physical body survived intact until the end of time. And this sparked an absolute obsession with physical immortality, leading to some morbidly fascinating medical procedures. I mean, surgeons would drain the blood, literally extract the brain out through the nose with a hook, and remove all the organs except the heart, which they kept in a jar. After a 40-day soak in this special salt water, the hollowed-out body was stuffed with sand, coated in honey and oil, and wrapped tightly in white bandages. It is just mind-blowing what they did to preserve the physical form.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer, staggering scale of it all. The race for physical immortality didn't just stop at mummies. It escalated to massive monuments. Pharaohs were in fierce competition to outbuild their predecessors, which culminated in the Great Pyramid of Khufu. To put this in perspective, that single pyramid weighs as much as 12 modern Burj Khalifas combined. The internal volume alone is so incredibly vast, you could park 2,000 large trucks right inside of it.
But here is the profound irony of it all. This brilliantly illustrates the exact moment the hubris of empire begins to consume itself. This obsession, this fierce competition, required a massive redirection of state wealth. Building these eternal monuments for just one man severely weakened the entire national economy. Ironically, the very stone structures that were meant to project eternal invincibility were exactly what brought this 3,000-year superpower to the absolute brink of financial collapse.
It was right at this critical moment of weakness that history took a massive pivot. On one hand, you have the extractive rule of the pharaohs, draining the state's resources for their own personal glory and enforcing a god complex. On the other hand, a restorative force arrives on the scene, Prophet Yusuf, or Joseph. Talk about administrative genius. He started as a young, enslaved boy sold in the market, but his brilliance eventually elevated him to prime minister. By partnering with the ruler, Yusuf stabilized the failing economy, literally rescued the nation from ruin, and ushered in an era of incredible prosperity for his descendants, the Bani Israel.
But as we analyze the cyclical nature of empires, we see that prosperity so often breeds paranoia.
Eventually, a new dynasty violently seized power and completely tore up the old rules. They enforced extreme anti-outsider policies, which is actually a fascinating historical echo of the strict political immigration crackdowns we sometimes see in the modern world. They used fear to consolidate their power, and for the Bani Israel, this meant their businesses were shut down, plunging them into 400 years of brutal, institutionalized slavery.
This fear eventually reached a horrific climax when an astrologer brought a terrifying prophecy directly to the pharaoh. A boy born to the enslaved Bani Israel would soon rise up and dismantle his 3,000-year empire. The pharaoh's reaction? Completely ruthless, total panic. He issued a catastrophic decree ordering his soldiers to go house to house and eliminate every single newborn male from the Bani Israel immediately upon birth.
And this brings us to what is arguably one of the most striking ironies in all of human history. The very boy prophesied to end the empire, Prophet Musa or Moses, slips right through their fingers. Not only does he survive, but he is unknowingly taken in, saved, and actually raised by the pharaoh himself right inside the palace walls. The very architect of the empire's destruction was nurtured right at the absolute center of his oppressor's power. It's like something out of a movie, but it's history. Years later, all of this builds to the ultimate confrontation. Musa returns, not as a palace prince, but as a prophet and a massive historical disruptor. He aggressively challenges the ancient status quo, demanding absolute freedom for his people. Through a series of profound miracles, he systematically shatters the illusion of the pharaoh's divinity. Eventually, Pharaoh Ramses caves, temporarily agreeing to let 600,000 Israelites leave. But his ego just couldn't handle the defeat. Ramses broke the pact and mobilized his entire military to hunt them down.
As the Israelites were cornered, a miraculous escape route opened up straight through the water. But Ramses, completely blinded by his own hubris, pursued them. The waters crashed down, consuming the pharaoh and his mighty army. So, the crucial point is, in that single moment, it wasn't just a man who drowned. That 3,000-year ideological myth of the immortal God King was shattered permanently. The entire world saw that Ramses was, at the end of the day, just a mortal man.
Let's take a step back and really synthesize what we've been looking at. When we analyze the cultural impact of the pharaohs, we're looking at a legacy of absolute tyranny, immense economic fragility masked by these grand monuments, all built on the backs of enslaved people. But, in stark contrast, the historical accounts of the prophets, like Yusuf and Musa, show a completely different, restorative legacy. They were about shattering divine myths, delivering economic salvation, and fighting for true human liberation.
And a historical record absolutely backs this up. After Ramses died, the Egyptian empire completely lost its superpower status and plunged into the Dark Ages. New powers rose in the region, like Prophet Suleiman, followed later by Alexander the Great, and then centuries of Roman occupation. That ancient empire never really recovered from its god complex. It constantly changed hands until Caliph Umar's forces finally arrived, fulfilling that initial directive from Prophet Muhammad we talked about earlier. Which brings us to the end of our analysis today, and to this final provocative thought I really want to leave you with. As we look back at the shifting sands of time, at the mummies and the colossal pyramids, we have to ask ourselves, what truly sustains a civilization? Is it grand monuments of stone built through fear and hubris? Or is it the foundations of justice, economic balance, and human freedom? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating cycle of history with me. Think about that and keep questioning.